What is a module or modules? The module pattern. Well, modules are parts that work together, and same within code. We can have different batches of code that all accomplish certain things, and we can pick and choose. Hey, I want tween.js, I want preload.js, but I don't want sound.js because I'm not using sound, that kind of thing. And these modules will work together to not overwrite one another in what's called a namespace. So in create.js, we can just use create.js with all of them, and that works out. Zim used to also launch in modules, but now Zim is one big script, and it can be broken down with distill, Zim distill, which actually breaks down even further than modules. The advantage of a module is you don't have to get more code than you really need, but that can still happen even when Zim was in modules, with 20 functions in each module, you don't usually need them all. So Zim now breaks down with distill to, it's like micro modules. But anyway, I want to show you the module pattern. Let's take a look. It's a heck of a lot of fun. I love it. So here we are in some JavaScript. And the idea behind it is that there's a namespace. So I'll build the Zim one for you. It would be var Zim. Now in its simplest form, we would just store an object. There is our object. And we might say ticker is something on that. So ticker colon is this function. Blah, 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 comma. And drag is this function right here. Comma, blah, 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 etc. And what that would allow us to do is we could say, all right, let's call Zim ticker, zim.ticker, like so. And I know that that calls my ticker function that is stored in the namespace Zim. So that's how we can stop our code from interfering with other people's code. Now, that's great, but the problem is if this were in one file and we loaded it, and imagine in another file we had another thing that we loaded all in the Zim namespace, and that one was hit test bounds, like that is that function, and this one is a circle, is this function. So this is one module. Imagine that we load it in a JavaScript file. Then we load in another module with a JavaScript file. Ticker would no longer exist because this var Zim just overwrote the previous var Zim. We no longer have access to these. Okay, so that doesn't quite work. It's nice, it almost works, but it doesn't quite work. Now we could do some conditional here saying if Zim already exists, or if Zim already exists, then what do? We would have to loop through this Zim, and we would have to take each one of these and add it to the previous Zim that already exists. That type of thing. Or in Zim, I've actually got a merge. Sometimes there's ways that we can merge objects, etc. So that's a little bit annoying. So the module pattern has come along and solves this problem for us in a nice, elegant way. Shall we take a look and see how it does it? So we'll leave this one for later, and let's apply the module pattern here. First of all, we say that it's equal to a function. And then in the function, we collect a Zim. We also execute the function, and we pass in Zim, or we pass in a blank object, like so. And the last step is we return Zim. Now some of these zims are actually different than other zims, but I tend to like it. And then we say zim, oh, what was that called? That was called zim, or ticker. Zim dot ticker is equal to that function. And no comma. And we say zim dot drag is equal to that function. So that is the format of a module. Now there's a whole bunch of things that we've done here, so let's go through them. First of all, we have a self-executing function right here. So the very first thing that happens with this code is this function is run. So it looks at what's in, and the very first thing when running a function is to check what's being passed in as a parameter. So here we go. Zim. Does zim exist? No, because we have not yet run this function. We're about to, and therefore we've not assigned anything to zim. So at the moment, zim does not exist. So if zim doesn't exist, then it passes in an empty object. This empty object then will get collected by the zim inside here, and this is a parameter name within here, zim. We then store on that empty object zim.ticker, so we store the ticker on there as a function, and we store the drag on that object, and then we return that object to here. So this function is going to return that object that it just made to zim. So now zim is equal to this thing, which has a ticker in it and a drag in it. Great. Cool, huh? But what does that really mean? Well, well, now we take what we had before with the hit test bounds, and I have to redo this a little bit. Stick them in here. Zim.hitTestBounds is equal to that function, no comma, and zim.circle is equal to this function, and there we return zim. Okay, so here's our first module. Now here's our second one. Let's watch what happens. Well, the very first thing in the second one is this function is going to run. And the first thing it does is does what's inside the parameters here. And it says, is there a zim? Well, this time, this other function's already run. It's already populated zim with this object that holds the ticker and the drag. So yes, indeed, zim exists as an object. So it takes zim and passes it into zim. So that was our earlier object with the ticker and the drag. And then it adds the hit test bounds to it, and then it adds the circle to it, and then it returns our new object, well, the same object, but now with hit test bounds and circle in it. So it returns it to this var zim. So we have double declared the var, but we get away with it. So it's not the end of the world. See, we don't know for sure. We keep the var in there because if we just did that, maybe this module wasn't loaded. So if you take a look, it really doesn't matter which module we load first. Isn't that neat? Here, we load this one first. We get the hit test bounds in the circle, and then we add the ticker and the drag. So it really doesn't matter which one we use. And then later on, we can just say, hey, zim.drag. And that would call this function right here, no problem. Or we could call zim.circle. Give me a new zim.circle. And that would use this function right in here. No problem. So that is the module pattern. Pretty neat, huh? And that means I can distribute this in one file, this distribute in another file. Everything will use the same namespace, whatever that is. And then we don't overwrite the the last ones that were made. Now it does mean that you need individual names here, but usually that's not a problem. I'm Inventor Dan Zen with the module pattern. We'll see the module pattern again. I tend to use it when I build in Model View Controller, I use the module pattern. All of my model view and controller is on the namespace of app, and that allows me to connect between code and stuff like that in the model view controller. So we'll see that in an upcoming What Is. Cool. Here at zimjs.com. Ciao.